Howdy freeze dryers, it's a rainy day here in the Rocky Mountain region, and every time we get a real good heavy rain like this, it makes me wonder if all of my freeze-dried food is stored properly. It also is a great reminder to check all of your freeze-dried food and maybe just check to make sure that with all the extra humidity in the air and the potential basement flooding or things like that, that all of it is done properly and that you've taken all the precautionary measures that we need to do for freeze-dried food. So that's what we're going to go over today. It's a good rainy day type of thing to do. But first, maybe you need to fully understand how to store your freeze-dried food properly. And to do that, we first need to discuss the 3 enemies of freeze-dried food and why they are the enemies of freeze-dried food. So there's 3 things that you want to avoid at all costs with freeze-dried food. 1 is light, 2 is moisture or water, 3 is oxygen. If you can keep those 3 enemies of freeze-dried food away from your freeze-dried food, your chances of long-term storage just increased by lots. So let's go over the first one, light. Why is light so bad for freeze-dried food? It actually will diminish the nutritional value and the color of the freeze-dried food, therefore reducing the quality of the freeze-dried food. It doesn't actually contaminate the freeze-dried food. It's just going to make it so it's not as good. And I actually have a great example of this. This is a mason jar full of diced tomatoes, and you can see that they're very yellow. They're not red anymore. These are homegrown tomatoes. So you know how homegrown tomatoes are usually very red. These have been exposed to light, but these are also lots of years old. And these could actually be one of the first few things that I freeze dried. You can see that I didn't even label them. I know they're tomatoes because I can see them, but I did not date them. I know they've been in here for a very long time, but because they've been exposed to light over the years, it just fades them out. The taste probably does not taste as good, and it's probably going to reduce the nutritional value of whatever you're doing. So you can protect the food a few different ways. You can go into number 10 cans, which is not really talked about a whole lot in freeze drying. That's if you're doing a big amount of freeze-dried storage. You can do the mason jars. You just need to make sure that you protect them from the light, or you can use a Mylar type food storage bag, and that will not allow any light to penetrate through the bag. Now let's talk about the second enemy, and that would be moisture or water. Anytime your freeze-dried food is exposed to moisture, even humidity in the air, your clock is ticking on your freeze-dried food as far as your shelf life. And that means that you need to pay attention to where you're storing your freeze-dried food. If you live in a humid climate, or if you have a basement that has been flooded in the past or something like that, be mindful of that. That can expose your food to moisture very quickly, especially if you think about a flood or something in a basement. You can ruin hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of freeze drying in just a matter of minutes. So this means that if you are storing your food on the floor, I would probably raise it up at least 6 inches if you can. Also, I would probably try and put it in a container. Even if it's just sitting on concrete, concrete is known to hold moisture. And if your moisture level is anything more than 0 with your freeze-dried food, clock's ticking. Number 3 enemy of freeze-dried food is oxygen. So when oxygen gets introduced into the environment the freeze-dried food is in, it starts the oxidation process. Once that oxidation process starts, you're going to start losing the nutrition and the quality of the food. You're also going to expose it to organisms and possibly fungi, miscolor. It can also cause off flavors, which you definitely don't want in your freeze-dried food. And I know it's a big debate, but in my opinion, it can cause oils and fats to go rancid as well. So your 2 most effective ways to reduce oxygen is with an oxygen absorber in your Mylar food storage bag or your mason jar, whatever you're storing your food in, and a vacuum chamber sealer can also help with that. A vacuum chamber sealer removes both the oxygen and the air in the bag, which is why you see it kind of crumple up like that. You're just reducing the air volume inside of it, but with that air, you're also reducing the oxygen as well. An oxygen absorber will just take oxygen out. So in the future, we'll actually follow this video up with an oxygen absorber video as well as a Mylar bag video. That'll kind of give you all the information that you want on that. If you've watched this channel for a while, you know that I like the USV32 made by Avid Armor. I think it's a really good value for what it does. It will also do large Mylar. It will seal Mylar. It double seals Mylar. And then you can actually get an attachment to do mason jars as well. But for what this does, it's very affordable compared to some of the competition. And the freeze drying community gets 10% off if you use the code LIVELIFESIMPLE in the promo code at checkout. You can also just follow our affiliate link down in the description. And that 10% off is pretty generous because I have not ever seen another discount on Avid Armor. So check that out. So just real quick, I kind of have a fourth enemy of freeze-dried food, and that is rodents. I have heard way too many horror stories of rats or mice getting into freeze-dried food and just ruining, you know, thousands of hours or dollars worth of freeze-dried food. So make sure you're storing your freeze-dried food appropriately in containers or somewhere safe from rodents. Another great thing about mason jars is a rodent cannot chew through that. Maybe if they were super hungry or if they were a zombie mouse or something, but I've never seen a mouse get through one of these mason jars. While we're talking about mason jars, I want to just go over the pros and cons of mason jars real quick. The pros of this are it's rodent proof. It's very, very easy to just take parts and pieces out of this as you need it. You can see the inside of a mason jar, which is nice. The cons, it's only going to eliminate 2 of our 3 enemies of freeze drying because it's not gonna block the light unless you put this somewhere where it's dark enough to never get light. The other thing that I do not like about mason jars, your food storage is gonna rely completely on this seal. So if you're reusing a seal, you have a bad seal, it doesn't get seated right, something, whether, you know, if it allows it to have a small leak, it's going to introduce oxygen. So not only are you letting light in, you're letting oxygen in, and moisture is gonna come in shortly after that. So it's just a matter of time before the food goes bad in here. That's why I think this is a much shorter term storage solution, but I use these just as much as Mylar probably, because a lot of our food storage is probably a year or less. So that's the quick version of the pros and cons of mason jars. The ultimate goal of freeze-dried food is a 0 moisture content. So before I let you go today, I want to show you 2 quick tools that are probably the most important or most helpful that I have found for freeze drying. The first one is a food scale. How is this going to help you determine if there's no moisture? It's very simple. If you suspect your freeze-dried food is not complete and not free of moisture, weigh the food with the tray, note that weight, put it back in the freeze dryer for a couple hours, weigh it again. If it's the same weight, you're not removing any more water. If it's not the same weight, you need to keep repeating that process until the weight is the same both times you have weighed it. My second recommendation is a thermal imaging camera. You can use any thermal imaging camera. The reason I use this FLIR One Pro is because it just clicks right into your phone. And compared to the others, it's really not as expensive. It's also very compact. I like this one because it shows you the hottest spot in the frame and also the coldest spot. How does that help with moisture? Because if something is still frozen or near frozen temperature, there is definitely still moisture within the freeze-dried food tray, so you know that you need to add more dry time until this reads that it's not frozen or near frozen anymore. I have used moisture meters and things like that in the past. They're so effective, but this seems to be a lot more accurate. Moisture meter would give you a lot of false readings unless you buy a really expensive one. You can also get an infrared thermometer. It's less expensive, it's not quite as accurate, but it does just about the same thing as the thermal imaging. You just have to make sure that you're pinpointed on your troubled spot. And that is all I have for you today. I hope I was helpful. If you have a second, please subscribe to Live Life Simple. We do primarily freeze drying on this channel, so take a second, click the rocking chair down in the corner. If this was helpful, let us know and let YouTube know. Give us a thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to check out any of the helpful freeze drying tools or products that we've talked about today, links can be found down in the description like usual. Make sure you stay tuned for our Mylar bag and oxygen absorber tutorials and information videos coming soon. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you learned something in this whole video. In the meantime, remember to live life simple. Catch you next week.